Today we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So let's say we had this example and we tried to solve this by factoring. So we would take 2 times 5, that would be 10, and then we try to figure out factors of 10 that would subtract to get 4, and that is not possible. This cannot be factored. And so we need to use the quadratic formula. So here it is. Pause it and write it down, and we're going to use it in the next example. So this is actually the same example that we started with. Really important to define what A, B, and C are. So here's the general standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And so A is always going to be the coefficient of the square term, B is always the coefficient of x, and C is the number that's by itself. So it's really important to define those, and I would say that should be your very first step is to write them down so you have them. So A is 2, B is 4, C is -5. And so I really recommend starting by writing the quadratic formula, and you do not have to memorize this. This is on your formula sheet. So it's going to be x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. And so I'm just going to go ahead and substitute all of these values. I really recommend using parentheses when you're substituting, especially with negative numbers. And so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to put parentheses around the 4. That's my b value. I'm going to put parentheses around the 4 again. And just anything I'm substituting, I'm going to put parentheses around. So now I'm going to get to the simplifying part. And what I would recommend at this point is to type in, so that's just -4, is to type in what we have as the radicand. When we're dealing with the quadratic formula, it's actually referred to as something else. It's called the discriminant. And then the denominator, we have 4. So like literally just type in this whole line, but just keep in mind it's still underneath the radical. So I have that right here, 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times -5. So I get 56. And the reason I recommend typing it in your calculator is because a lot of times people try to do this in parts or maybe try to do the whole thing in your head, and it's just a lot of room for error. So I would say let's not give it room for error, and we can just type in the calculator. And so I'm going to simplify radical 56. Every single person should know how to do that by now, so I'm not going to talk through those steps. But when I simplify it, I'm going to get 2 times the square root of 14 all over 4, and this can actually be simplified further. And here's what I'm going to say at this point to simplify this further. Just separate this. So I have this denominator of 4, but this goes with each of the terms in the numerator. So I'm just going to rewrite it as -4 divided by 4 plus or minus 2 radical 14 over 4. And now I can go ahead and divide out like terms. So -4 divided by 4, that's just -1. And 2 goes into itself once, and it goes into 4 2 times. So I'm left with radical 14 over 2. So my answer is -1 plus or minus the square root of 14 over 2. And you can either write it like that, or you might, I guess you might see it in a solution set as -1 minus radical 14 over 2 and -1 plus radical 14 over 2. So either way would be correct. It just depends on how the question is phrasing it. If it's a multiple choice, you could see either one of these. So here's number 2. This should be in red because guess what? You are going to try this one. Good luck. We'll talk about this tomorrow.